There's no denying that 2020 has been an entire dumpster fire, but it is good to kind of think back on the good stuff for once. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am going to talk to you about the new authors that I discovered in 2020 who might be joining my favorite authors list. So these are people whose books I've read for the first time. Maybe they were debut authors in 2020, or maybe I just read their books for the first time in 2020. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of diversity in the genres here because the majority of the favorite authors that I have found have come from romance section. The first author on the list is actually two authors, and that is Christina Lauren. I read The Unhoneymooners back in May, and it very quickly became one of my favorite books of 2020. And I think it kind of won me over to the romance genre in total because I've read so much more romance this year than I would have if I hadn't read that book. I loved that so much. I went out and got two more Christina Lauren books without only having just read one. I have got Roomies and I have got Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. And I've also got a couple of them on my wish list on Amazon. I have got In a Holidays, which is their brand new Christmas themed romance. And I've also got The Honey Don't List, which I don't think is a continuation of The Unhoneymooners. But if any of the books that I have here or that are on my Amazon wish list are as good as The Unhoneymooners, I'm in for a good ride. Second on the list is another not debut author, but it is the first time that I have read some of their work, and it is Katherine McGee. So I first read the first in the American Rose duology in January or February, and it was one of my first 5-star reads for the whole year. That made me so ready for Majesty to come out. I put that on my wish list. I think as soon as it came out, I had it on my wish list as a pre-order. But I picked it up myself in one of the local bookshops, I think in September, October kind of time. I haven't read it yet. I think I'm just kind of savoring the moment. I'm kind of waiting to see what 2021 is going to bring. I have read a sample of the first chapter and I am so into what's going to happen in this book, especially because American Royals ended on such a cliffhanger that the story is genuinely only going to get better from there. The next one on the list is a debut author, and it's an Irish author, and it is Kira Smith. So she has got a second book coming out in 2021. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. This was one of my highlights of 2020, and I already know that so far. It was fantastic, and I think one of the things that made this book such a great read for me is that it was set in Ireland, that I recognised so much of the slang, I recognised so much of the things that were happening to Saoirse, the main character, such as that she was sitting her leaving cert, that she was worried about her CAO points, that she was worried about going to university. All of the terminology that was in this book was very Irish themed. All of the events that were happening in the book were very Irish themed. You even had an Irish summer where it was likely raining 9 times out of 10 on that chapter. I really loved this book, and I absolutely genuinely cannot wait to see what Kira Smith does next. This isn't the book that won me over to this author, but it is the next in the series, and it is the next one of theirs that I am so excited to pick up. So I listened as an audiobook to The Kids Quotient by Helen Huang, fell in love with it, and instantly went out and brought The Bride Test. I actually think I have a copy of The Kids Quotient somewhere in my house, but just cannot find it. It has such fantastic representation. It has a main character who is a woman who works in STEM. That is something that is so heavily missing in romance books, in women's fiction in general. It has autism representation. It has Asian representation. It is chock full of representation that people need to see themselves on the page. And I know that this book also features quite a lot of, I think it's either autism or ADHD representation. Again, you've got Asian rep, you've got immigrant rep. I am so in love with the concept of these books. I love the romances that work throughout them, and there are some really great steamy scenes in these books. Absolutely won over on Helen Huang. Again, for this author, it only took one to win me over. But I've got a second book of theirs as an audiobook on request from my local library. I'm just waiting for it to kind of free up a bit. It is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I was a little bit apprehensive going into this book because it was written in free verse, as you can see if I just flip through a couple of the pages. I don't read a lot of free verse laid out books, so I don't know what it was, but I kind of figured that wouldn't make me get into the story as much as it did. But oh my god, I was won over by this. And then when I heard that this is not the only book that Elizabeth Acevedo has actually had out, there's also The Poet X, and there's also With the Fire on High, which is the one that I've got from the local library. I cannot wait to discover more of her back catalogue. And so we come to the authors that I have discovered on ebooks this year. So the first one is Emma Lord. Emma Lord is another debut author, and she has written the book Tweet Cute. Tweet Cute was one of the books that I have most anticipated for 2020, and it was one of the books that absolutely did not let me down. I loved the relationship between Pepper and Jack. I loved the names, Pepper and Jack, first of all. I loved that it was so heavily focused on food, that it was heavily focused on family, that it was heavily focused on the togetherness that food and family bring to you. I also loved that these family relationships are kind of rocky at times, that it's not always plain sailing, that there's a lot of kind of microaggressions between the family members. One of the main things that I loved about this so much was the food, and that it came with some really great grilled cheese ideas. It came with, I think online I found a recipe for something that was mentioned in this book so often, which was monster cake. It's kind of like diabetes in a tray, if you want to think it. If you want to use all of your calorie intake for the next 3 days, then just cook this and have one slice of it. That's kind of all that you need to do. I know that Emma Lord is working on something else right now. I don't know what it is, and I don't know when the due date is, but I am so excited to see her next book. And so my last favorite new author discovery of 2020 was Sally Thorne. So I read her actually quite recently. I read The Hating Game in like mid to late November. Honestly, I didn't really go in with a lot of expectations. I knew that Emma from Drinking by Myself had read this for like a 24-hour romance readathon, and she absolutely loved it. She's not somebody who reads quite a lot of romance, but I feel like when somebody doesn't read the genre as much as you do but still loves that book, it's kind of a good sign. I took that on board, bought it in like May or so, and then didn't read it until mid to late November, because that's just how I roll. But when I finally read that book, it completely blew me away. I really loved the relationship, not just the romance side of it, but also like the kind of playful banter and the kind of slagging and workplace banter relationship kind of thing that the main characters had. I was so invested in that book, and there are some really great steamy scenes in that one too. I don't have a copy of her next book, which is 99% mine, but I have heard that it's a really great read, and I cannot wait for my book buying ban for this year to be over so I can finally read it. So those were my favorite new authors that I discovered in 2020. Who was your favorite new author of 2020? Please let me know in the comments, because I would love to go and discover some new people. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.